Not that the network isn't worth talking about, but we really, yeah, I think we've had a lot of fun this year, just kind of having some random conversations about things that we're interested in, and inviting others in the network to come join us. Sometimes we have panelists who know things about things, and that's always interesting to hear them talk about the things they're passionate about. And other times it's just a topic we want to explore, and we all do a little research and we all talk about it. And yeah, I think it's been one of my favorite things this year. So that's what we are doing here. For this call, Isaiah Friesen is facilitating, so he'll be leading the, I guess, guiding our question time. A couple of us here are serving as panelists today, although very informally. I think it'll be more of a conversation about, some of us were at convention, some of us weren't, and we can share about the things we saw and heard there, and how that's making us feel. Basically, that's the gist of today's conversation. Should we do introductions? I guess that'd probably be a good idea. Yeah. What things do we usually pair with introductions? Let's see. We could do school, I guess. Where you work or live now would be another good one. Oh, and thank you, Ryan. Just posted a chat. We often record these monthly meetups so that people can watch them later if they so choose to, if they weren't able to make it tonight. So thanks for recording it, Ryan. I appreciate it. So I'll start with the introductions. We can do this pretty quick. I'm Harrison. Oh yeah, Isaiah, you have a question? Isaiah, I cannot hear you. I don't know if the others can. Maybe try logging in again. This is something that's happened before. Just X out of the window and try logging in again. I don't know why it does that.
Seems as though Isaiah has an alternative introduction structure for us, but
yeah,
given the fact that we can't understand it, shall we continue or what? Where is it?
Maybe there's no good internet in Minnesota.
Well, I'm Cecilia. I went to Goshen. I live in Pittsburgh. I work at a STEM nonprofit called the Science Lab. Today I was in conversations about synthetic biology, which is a concept I'm not altogether sure I support. And I'm excited that I'm moving to a new house in a week and a half.
Thanks. Okay, Isaiah sent me a message with his suggested introduction. So here are the things he was thinking about. Your name, your pronoun, the Mennonite school that you were associated with in whatever capacity that is, and where we are calling in from. So that is 4 things. So I can start, or I can follow up Cecilia, or if you want, go ahead, Cecilia, I'll let you.
I said all those things, I think, except she, her. Carry on.
Okay, I'm Harrison, he, him. I'm associated with Eastern Mennonite University, and I'm calling in from a friend's house in Harrisonburg.
I'm Meg Short, she, her. I went to Bluffton University and now work at the university, live in Bluffton, Ohio.
My name is Katie, she, her. I just graduated from Fresno Pacific in California, which is where I'm calling in from, but I'm moving to Harrisonburg on Monday.
I'm Abby. I went to EMU, she, her pronouns, and I'm calling from New York City.
I'm Isaiah. I'm calling in from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I live in American Twin Cities. He, him pronouns. I graduated from Goshen College, and I'm beginning the distance MDiv program at AMDS this fall, so that's also me. Ryan?
Yeah, and I'm Ryan. He, him pronouns. I graduated from Bluffton in 2016, and I'm calling in from Pittsburgh.
Cool. Thank you all for the intros. So if we want to go ahead into, are we good to go ahead into like panelist discussion time? Okay. I briefly dropped into the Mennonite Convention and was encouraged to see like Center for Sustainable Climate Solutions people there, but I don't have a very developed idea beyond that of what all went on. So kind of the first question I wanted to ask was where you all who were there saw things that made you feel hopeful or frustrated or enlightening. If there's one of those that moves you first, I'd be curious to hear about that.
Can you repeat the question for me? I didn't quite catch all of it.
Yeah. As far as like signs of hope regarding hope or movement forward, where did you see encouraging things basically regarding climate justice at MCUSA convention? And if you feel ready already to move into like frustrations, basically hopes and not hopes.
I can go first. This was my first Mennonite convention, and it was also my first time connecting with this network and connecting with other folks who had gone to Mennonite colleges, but were also just connecting over this subject. And so I found hope in that younger people want to talk about it and are doing things. But there's also kind of this sense of exhaustion and not always knowing what direction to take our work, not knowing where to focus, and just kind of like generational gaps between us and previous generations. But overall, I found a lot of hope because it was my first time really engaging with other young Mennonite connected people directly on climate.
Thanks, Abby.
I saw, I guess, a lot of young people carrying their own water bottles, so that was just encouraging to me. I think it's kind of a cultural shift from even 4 years ago when we were in Kansas City for a convention. So that's really exciting. I saw that, like, I think it was Everence or one of those kind of organizations was giving out reusable straws in a bag with a cleaning thing. So I saw some people really excited about getting their first kind of like metal straw or something. So hopefully those started and sparked some good conversations.
Thanks.
I think I'm definitely with Meg on this one, at least like with how I think I saw a lot of young people. And with like the other booths that I briefly visited, I felt like it was like the conversation was a little more present than I thought. This is my first one, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. But from what I heard, it sounded like the center kind of had more of a presence than it's ever had before at the convention. And I stayed a lot at the tables So I was talking to a lot of people about the center, and regardless of where a lot of people, I talked to a lot of pastors and a lot of just people in general, some of whom had thought a lot about this and some of whom really had not. And I had a lot of kind of either explaining to do or kind of conversationing to do. And regardless of where people were, they were really open to the conversation, I felt like, in general. So I think that made me feel pretty hopeful. I wasn't expecting that too much, and I think I got a lot more positive feedback than I expected.
Yeah, I think I would also second that. That the conversation was more present than I was expecting. I definitely remember going to convention 2 years ago and just feeling like it wasn't a part of the conversation at all. And maybe I've changed since then, but I think the church has also changed a little bit. I recognize that we don't actually have anyone here who went to the delegate sessions, right? None of you were in the delegate sessions, which is kind of a bummer. One of the others that I invited, Lily, couldn't make it tonight, and her and I had talked a little bit about what the delegate sessions were like. But one thing I did hear was that I heard this from a couple people who were in the sessions. There was, I think, a peace and justice committee who was kind of charged with coming up with the big focus issue for the next 2 years. And I think what they landed on was immigration and movement of people in general. But that the close second for topic was climate change. And that was pretty hopeful for me, because I think 2 years ago, if you would have said that, I would have been really surprised. Yeah, so I think that's a sign that, like, people are more and more ready to have the conversation. I also want to point out my experience with the young adults meeting executive leadership of MCUSA, which was an evening thing. I think Abby also came to that. And I mean, first of all, that's cool that they were having a young adults meeting the executive leadership of MCUSA event. And we split up into different table groups. And so naturally, I went to the one on climate change because that's kind of what I was there for. And I definitely appreciated having that space, or just that space had been created. I think that's really important. But at the end of it was like a 45-minute discussion. At the end of the discussion, we were all asked to come up with one word that represented our feelings after the post conversation, and each say it. Just go around the room and have everyone say their one word to the group. And my word was impatient, which I'm still not exactly sure why I chose that, but I think I was just feeling like, I think that night especially, I was feeling like I had been in that same exact place 2 years earlier, and that it felt exactly the same, and that not much had changed. And I still felt like people had good intentions, like the people on the leadership team weren't intentionally not caring about climate change and were well informed generally, but it still felt like the same thing was just kind of happening over and over again, and I didn't know what else to say or what else to do. So I guess that's a little bit leading into the frustration side, but a little bit of both of that particular event.
Sorry, Harrison, could you say what that event was again? Was that a seminar or a meeting?
Yeah, sure. So it was a specially designated young adult gathering in the evening. And so it was a place, I think they had, I don't know if it's like 8 or 10 of the leadership board of the church there, and then just had a number of different table groups that the leadership team was spread out among the table groups, and then the young adults who were in the room could choose what discussion group they wanted to stay at.
Harrison, were you at that 2 years ago in Orlando? Because I think they had a very similar young adult thing there, but I think they only had like 2 leader types.
Yeah, from what I remember, I was at that event, and from what I remember, it was more like I felt like that event was more like having a place where young adults can discuss among themselves the issues that they cared about. I think it was still kind of branded as like meet the leadership, but I think you're right. There were only like a couple. There were like 2 or 3 that were there, and so there weren't enough to go to every single discussion group. It was more like we broke up to discussion groups, and then at the end, we all came back and shared what we were thinking with the few executive leaders that were there, and that also didn't really feel like anything came out of that. So I think this process felt better because there were a few leaders at every single table group that were like talking directly with a few young adults and asking them questions about why they felt that way. And I felt like they really were listening to what I was saying. I felt really heard by them. Yeah. But it did feel a bit repetitive, perhaps.
I mean, I wasn't saying that. I feel like it's a really good practice to have. Like, it's only once every 2 years. Like, great respect to give young people of having that kind of conversation. I just wondered because I remember coming out of that one feeling like, okay, maybe there was some listening that took place, but that's not action. So it seems like that's a similar reaction this time.
Could you say, Harrison, or if any others of you were at that gathering or at that table, like who were the other folks there, or particularly who the executive board members were, but also who else kind of was represented around your table, identities, locations, etc.?
I was at another table where we were talking about interpretation of the Bible and discipleship. So that was not really climate related. But I think a pretty good representation of the board of MCUSA was there. And then there were there were some delegates, some younger delegates, some younger pastors, and then also just young adults. And then the night before, we had written down questions that we were interested in talking about with the board members. And so they were really receptive to just kind of splitting into groups and talking about those specific questions. So the topics really varied.
Okay. I'm like particularly wondering like if there was a table discussing climate change or climate justice, like who was at that table of the executive board leaders?
Oh, I'm not sure. I have to wait for Harrison to get back on.
Yeah. Harrison, can you hear?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
I'm fully back. I just missed the last 2 minutes or so.
Abby was just sharing about her table at the young adult and executive board events on discipleship, and I was curious if you could say more about like the makeup of the table on climate change, like who was there and what kinds of things you heard discussed, especially who the executive board members were, but also what other kinds of people were represented.
There were 2 executive board members there. One was an older man by the name of Earl Kellogg from Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. I only know all of that because I talked to him for a while. And then I don't actually remember the other person's name. She was a woman, middle-aged woman. I don't remember her name though. Both white. The other students, or sorry, not students, young adults. I don't know if I have any direct observations about the makeup of our group. But it seemed like I was interested in how the the executive board members split up among the table groups, because it was done kind of spur of the moment, and I was wondering if maybe some intentionality would have been helpful there, because I think it was more of a thing like the organizer said, we're going to split up into these groups at these tables, go, and executive board members just split up among the groups as you see fit, but we need to have one or two at every table. And so I think the people who came to our table were like people who were ready to hear what we wanted to say about climate change. Like they were, yeah, they were part of us. It didn't feel like I was talking to someone who really needed to hear it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just from hearing the reactions from the four of you, five of you, I guess. It sounds like you all were expecting, like if you think about whatever that scale is of like strong opposition through strong support, and how like you can classify people's approaches to issues on that spectrum. Like it sounds like you were going to convention thinking you're going to find people who were like in the disagree camp around climate change, which would surprise me honestly. So could someone break down like what were your assumptions like of like where people would be at, and what were you looking for in terms of like having these conversations? Because yeah, I'm just curious.
I think I'm usually just kind of, I go into situations maybe a little bit over defensive, like maybe I'm expecting pushback because, I mean, I'm from, my church community back home is a lot more conservative, and so I would get more pushback there. And since this was my first Mennonite convention, I just didn't quite know what to expect, so I went kind of ready to be on the defense. And was really encouraged that people were willing to engage.
Did you go in a particular capacity, Abby?
Yeah, I wasn't a delegate, but I work with the Mennonite Central Committee's UN office. And so, yeah, so I'm trying to help us build a better like international policy climate change portfolio. And so, and also just I'm our communications person, so I'm trying to connect more with Mennonite communities. So that's the capacity I went in. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm just going ahead and like tossing some questions that I had brainstormed onto the chat in case those are helpful as a guide, and I figure we can directly address or not any of those, depending on what people are feeling.
I just wanted to, I think, answer Cecilia's question a little bit, because as you're asking questions, I think it's true, and I hadn't, actually, no, that's not true. I did think about kind of my approach as I was coming into it, because I feel similar, at least in background, maybe to what Abby was describing, where I'm from a conservative church, and the work that I'm going to be doing with the center is largely going to be with pastors, and I understand that pastors have also a wide variety on the spectrum of where they're at on issues of climate change. So I was expecting pretty much anything. I was expecting to talk to people who didn't believe in climate change. I was expecting people who hadn't thought about it. I was expecting to talk to people who, are completely active, because I'm looking for all those people as I begin my work with the center. I wasn't expecting very many sessions around climate change, and I think the ones that were, which I was looking for more, I guess, were either from the center or from Mennonite Creation Care Network, or maybe a little bit with MCC, I think, in regards to like the policy or like the being an advocate for immigrants who are dealing with these issues, but that was not really central to their topic. So I think I was expecting a little bit of everything, and I was like pleasantly surprised that they were like trying to use compostable things like for the plates or whatever, in kind of background ways. But I think I got what I expected. Maybe I got a little more than I expected when I was talking to people, because I took a lot of names and numbers for the work that I'm going to be doing. And most of them are either interested or just kind of stymied in their own churches on how to deal with these issues. And so they seem receptive or like already active in some way.
To also answer that question, I don't think I was expecting like resistance either. I kind of mentioned before like that I may have changed a little bit in the last 2 years as well, which part of that is that my work is different, and so whereas 2 years ago it felt like I was kind of forcing the issue or like pushing an agenda or something. If I were to bring up climate change, like at the Future Church Summit, like I felt like it was just a conversation that was absent or kind of pushed to the side, and I felt like I was trying to force the conversation, and it just didn't really seem to be working. This year, my job is to talk about climate change, and so, you know, if people came to my booth, and I think the center's booth was a huge part of this. We had a ton of people visit our exhibit, and yeah, I think that just helps to have somewhere to start the conversation. It did seem like people were generally eager to hear more about what I was doing, and felt like I was supported by most of the people I talked to. But also still wondering if that is the case, why there isn't more, I don't know, widespread action or anything, I guess. I did see this week that MCC released its strategies and vision for the next 5 years, and that one of them is climate change, which is awesome. I'm like super pumped about that. And that's like, yeah, that's really exciting, because I think that's one of the first Mennonite orgs that I've seen that has done that. So like, I guess what I'm saying is, what my experience at convention didn't really match up with what I am still seeing from like the broader church, or like in terms of actual results or changes. I'm still not feeling them. But so that's why I had kind of mentioned that the conversation, I think, was still moving in the right direction, but maybe I'm feeling impatient.
I think I was expecting, because I didn't go to the 2017 convention, the same kind of thing at the that the 2015 one was, and it was, I don't know, it's just a different church because so many churches have left, so it was just a totally different feel than what I was preparing for. Not that I like engaged that many people in conversations about climate change, but it just seemed to me like it was different. And maybe that's just the churches that still participate in things like convention are becoming a little more homogenous, progressive. I don't know. Like there's still people in the greater, still involved in MCUSA that just don't go to convention anymore. Or I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's definitely different than what I was expecting.
One of my other profiles with my office is in migration, and so I went to I went to as many migration, what are they called? Sessions, side events, sessions, as I could. And it seemed like a good way to engage with older folks in Mennonite churches who are like long-term members of Mennonite churches is to give them something they can do as a community or as a church. So a lot of them were really excited about their churches either becoming sanctuary churches or supporting migrants in whatever way, whether that's like preparing relief kits or going and visiting them in detention centers or being a sanctuary church. And so I know that gets harder because younger folks are less likely, I feel like, to be consistently engaged in a church we're a little bit more transient, I think. But I think it might be a good approach if we want to engage with older folks and get them involved in climate action and climate advocacy, is to encourage them to work with their churches or give them ideas of what they can do as a community.
That sounds good, Abby. I'm curious if you could say more about what that might look like to you in a congregation or two that you'd be familiar with, or any people you talk to. If you have anything in mind.
I don't know if I have any specific examples, but it just seems like, everything from in-person interaction with people to, going and advocating on the Hill, it seemed like people were much more likely to get excited about that if they went with their church groups or went with a group of like-minded people, especially if what they had in common was rooted in their theology. So I think I don't have any specific examples, but I do think there's a pretty wide range of things there's a wider range of things that people would be willing to do as a group or as a congregation than if we just have an ask for an individual. And then I've seen that happening here a bit too. I know that Doug Kaufman, I think. Yeah, he recently led a pastor's retreat here in New York for pastors who are interested in leading their congregations and talking about climate change. So I thought that was really encouraging to see that too, because I think those congregations are going to have a lot more education now and hopefully move in the right direction.
I second that. I feel like I'm just seconding people this whole time, but what I heard, I guess from my experience with MCCN and CSCS so far, as I've been an intern with them last year and then an ambassador with them over this past year, and then now as a fellow, I feel like I did a lot of church calling last summer with MCCN, with Mennonite Creation Care Network. And what they did and what I ended up getting a lot of stories on were they had MCCN asked churches to focus on a specific issue, or they kind of gave churches we're going to talk about our watersheds during this 6-month period or whatever. And in order to do that, we're asking all churches to clean up their watersheds. So whatever that looks like for you, if that's a river, if that's a lake, or if it's, I don't know, something else, churches were more likely to act if they had kind of a specific goal in mind, or concrete resources. A lot of the churches that MCCN has in their network have gone through the Sunday school curriculum that Jennifer Schrock wrote about creation care. And I noticed at the convention, churches were also really excited when they heard that there was a podcast, because a lot of people just listen to podcasts on their own, but and then even more excited that there was a curriculum coming out that they could use with their Bible studies. So whether or not, they end up using it or whatever, I noticed when people ask, like, so, you know, where do I fit in, or where does my church fit in? Like, I was able to not just be like, oh, I'm doing research, but I was like, no, like, we have, you can listen to these, you can look at this, you can go over to MCCN, they have a network for you, you know, they have like kind of goals in place, because I think a lot of times other people don't know a lot about the issue in the first place, or they don't have time to explore it, or they're just overwhelmed at what their church could do because they think the issue is so big, which it is. But having kind of either the resources or giving like a focus to the issue for like a specific amount of time has, at least in my experience, helped churches focus and kind of do something, I guess. And that's totally like putting aside like the youth. Like that's mainly like pastors or people who already have kind of weight in the church, or church leaders, that sort of a thing.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second, and you may have covered this, but I heard that there was, for the first time, an intersectional justice booth, and I wondered how, I mean, we've been talking like single issue minds for the past 40 minutes, and I feel like that's not who we are. So how, like, did you have any interaction with that, or like how did you see intersectionality and like solidarity, especially with like, yeah, immigrant groups, with Native American support and other issues?
Well, there was so much rainbow everywhere, which was such, I don't know, it was just such a relief, I guess, after the 2015 convention. Yeah, I was stuck in the MCU booth most of the time, but like whenever I looked over, there were so many youth over at I think they just called it Big Booth, like the intersectional Big Booth. And it was just really cool to see all these kids talking to all the different organizations that, I don't know, like even when I was in high school were ones that our youth group would have been like, oh, like maybe we just quickly walk past this and like don't engage with these people, or like, I don't know, ones that seem slightly more controversial for whatever reason to certain churches. So that was really encouraging, I thought.
Did anyone attend any like high school youth targeted events and or like have significant conversations with high schoolers about intersectional justice work?
I helped lead a youth workshop. It was kind of like a choose your own adventure migration game. And so I mean, I don't know if that's getting at like the kind of intersectionality that we're talking about, but it was a way to get kids to think about different aspects that go behind each issue. So, you know, if they were pretending to be a refugee or a family from Syria who could potentially be displaced, they had to think about everything from gender dynamics to like on the ground conflict to the international refugee systems, like UN systems, US politics, European politics. And I mean, it was just kind of like a quick game, but it involved a lot of the moving pieces that are involved in a situation like that, and they seemed really receptive to it. I can't think of anything that specifically involved climate besides like when they were playing families moving from Central America into the southwestern United States. climate would have come up then. But it was like we had really good groups of kids and really receptive to hearing about different sides of each issue.
Katie, did you go to any of SIBO's seminars for the youth? No. Okay. I'd be interested in hearing how those went. We heard they were well attended. One of a woman that works with the center from Zimbabwe was doing a few seminars at the convention. And several of them were particularly with the youth and were definitely well attended. But yeah, I wish I knew how they had gone.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't go to any, but from the interactions and like we have like the young people's climate event, like in the evening that conflicted with literally every other young person evening event. So that was not very well attended, but SIBO had a way of like demanding, almost demanding answers from people. She would let them talk, and she was very encouraging, and it was clear that she knew a lot about what she was talking about. But I would imagine that she did that in the youth sections too, of like, you've talked about this for a long time, you seem to be really passionate, things are really getting under your skin, like what are you going to do? And that was something that kind of stopped me in my tracks when she attended our kind of center get together. And I overheard it when she was talking to, there was a lot of older people at one of the other sessions that we had. I think that's kind of intimidating. So I don't know what, a young person might have done with that, but there weren't really a whole lot of people demanding answers. I felt like at these seminars, which I mean is what it is, but I felt like SIBO was really doing that, and yeah, that was kind of a different take. Not something I feel like most Americans are willing to do in like a group setting, like of people that you've shared names with and that sort of a thing. I just thought that was kind of different, and I appreciated it a lot. I don't know.
I didn't attend convention, but one thing that has struck me when I'm working with the youth at Pittsburgh Mennonite Church, and these are like older middle school or younger high school kids, are that they don't seem to hold the same like stereotypes or beliefs that I had to like unlearn about things involving like gender and climate change even. Like they've just grown up, like their younger generation, ready to like, when the ball is passed to them, to like move on further than we are. Like obviously like they're still young, and so they have to like figure out all the details and the backing for what they know to be true, but it's just exciting to see like where they're poised and ready to head once they have that.
Now that you say that, I talked to a lot of younger high school and middle school age girls, because we had like an activity at our table at the center, like bracelet making or whatever. And a lot of times a lot of the girls were saying like, oh, like I already like, I don't eat meat because like of climate change, or I'm trying to do these things, I'm trying to get my family involved. Like they were already kind of like a step ahead, and like Ryan, you were saying, like the things I had to unlearn or like that were really scary to me and talking to other people, like they're already like, oh, I do that. Like, and so I thought that was kind of a positive thing. Yeah, where the things I was saying were not really new to these people, these kids or these young adults. And it wasn't just young women, but a lot of the people that were there that I talked to were young girls, and they were very open I think, excited to talk and to already share like the types of things that they were trying to do with their families, which I think was really cool.
I want to bring this back and just make an additional comment about. I just think your comment, Cecilia, is really important about the what this could look like as an intersectional issue, and just like wondering myself why like I wasn't, or like we weren't a part of the intersectional justice booth as a as a Center for Sustainable Climate Solutions. I mean, there are like organizational things. It was our first convention, and so we didn't really know about it. But how could we work together to make, to make both, that more understood, I guess. I think it's a really good point and good for me to be thinking about.
I would say that's something I have wondered about too. Is like, what you just named of like why wouldn't the CSCS be included in that group? And I wondered if there was like particular institutional reasons, or if it was just that didn't get organized ahead of time. And then that's part of like a general thing that I'm wondering is if any of you, whether you attended convention or not, have particular reflections on how MCUSA conventions might be used more strategically for SAN purposes, basically.
And just another question in that vein is like, or a statement, when I'm at convention, but I have been shocked to hear all of the hopeful and positive things you all have to say, because I've never left a convention feeling net positive. I've always been both personally, feeling despair and frustration, and like in communities of people that have left feeling like just at a complete loss. So part of me is happy to hear those positive reflections, but the other part of me is like, okay, what are we doing wrong, or what are we doing like incompletely, that we can go to a space like that and feel like our job is done, or like we're doing what we're supposed to? Because just like we're saying young people are ready to move, like we are the young people and we should be pushing. I'm not saying that like the church leaders are like A-okay.
I would echo and affirm that too, just thinking from a standpoint of like, I can see that there are good things happening in the Mennonite Church, and like I was encouraged to see like some of the seminars that there were, and like the CSCS booth and the intersectionality booth. But like now, I'm not like a master organizer, but I've been learning a lot about like organizing in the church, working with Methodists over the past year. And there are as many United Methodists in Minnesota that we're working to organize and develop leadership among as there are like Mennonites in MCUSA. So the scale of organizing and trying to move people is like geographically still spread out over a state, but it's just a state. And trying to think from a lens of like what campaigns we would have, or what specific movement we really want to see happen, and thinking about what that would look like in a denomination that's so spread out across the country. I'm just like, part of it is that I haven't been as tuned into Mennonite networks, but I'm also wondering like, just what any organizing strategy looks like, or what the issue might even be that we would try to dig in around, if there were to be one. I'm not saying there's not any hope for that, but I'm wondering about it, and how convention and how sand play into that generally.
That was something I kind of thought about. At the beginning of the week, I recorded an oral history type thing for the MCUSA archives, and yeah, she asked me like, what are the main things that you would say to like leadership if they were sitting in the room right now, or like how would you change the church? And it threw me off because, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just haven't had to think about those things, but I know there are so many people that have had to think about those things and would have fantastic answers when asked like what you would change and, you know, immediate response to that. But yeah, I guess I just haven't spent as much time, and there's definitely layers of privilege there that I haven't had to spend time thinking about what I would immediately change about the church or leadership or the structures and all the things that are keeping people out.
Cecilia, I would just ask you if you would say any more about this, or ideas, hopes you might have, especially because I know you've done a lot of organizing stuff, both at Goshen when we were on campus, and I know you're continuing that, at least to some extent, in Pittsburgh. Like, if you were to suggest, like, mass scale, like, changes or actions that that would give you hope that you haven't had leaving past conventions, what would that look like to you potentially? Just for some ideas.
There's a lot of layers to that. There's like the structural side that Meg was just talking about, and then there's like the activism side that you're mentioning. I feel like maybe activism is more compatible with the Methodist in Minnesota than it is with the MCUSA, but having just discovered that migration and immigration is like the focus, I feel like direct action support of immigrants and people seeking asylum and refugees, with the added like aspect of like illuminating the like environmental and economic injustices that are part of that, would be something that would be like really important for the church to do. And then also the ongoing continuous need to integrate like climate justice organizing with land justice organizing around Indigenous rights, because that conversation has expanded a lot in the past, like maybe what, 6-8 years in the Mennonite Church, with dismantling the doctrine of discovery and some other projects that have been happening like with MCC. But I feel like that is something that SAN specifically could be a lot more explicit about centering around, is like, you know, whatever being anti like colonialist and all of that would be like really both vital to our like framework and also potentially really positive for like connecting with people who have other like perspectives on this issue, because like I don't want this group to be like a single issue, like narrow echo chamber. And I feel like if we're attentive and like if we are like, yeah, if we're intentional about making sure that it's clear that there's intersectional like conversations happening, then people might feel more apt to join and like kind of accelerate that.
Thanks for your comments, Cecilia. I just wanted to quickly point out that it is after 10 o'clock here on the East Coast anyway. So if you need to head out, feel free. I think I get the vibe that there's still more conversation to be had, and I'm happy to stick around for that. But also, if you need to head out, please feel free.
I think something that's going to be really important to address, well, it's important now and it has been important, but I think like identifying how some Anabaptists have identified as non-violent or pacifist, and that meaning a way of like really being separated from an issue and being complacent in a lot of issues. And I think climate change is a definite place where we can say it's time to turn that narrative around and, you know, stop hiding complacency behind nonviolence and inaction. Because, yeah, I mean, those messages are coming out a lot now, and like dismantling the DoD and then talking about Mennonites during the Holocaust. There was a session on that. So I think there's an opportunity to engage in those conversations and talk about what it means to be complacent in an issue like climate change, how it's affecting different areas and people in different ways.
I probably should get off this call, but I'm wondering if Harrison or Cecilia or Ryan, not sure if you're, who's best ready to answer this, but could you say when like the next like SANS steering committee meeting would be, or when approximately when the next like call might be that any or all of us might be getting on?
Yeah. Thanks, Isaiah. I am planning to organize the next steering call, and I was planning to do it next week sometime. I was going to like, my plan of action was to like send a message to the people who are like regular attenders to those calls to find a date that works for those who still want to attend. But maybe we could give a second. If anybody here is also interested, like what days next week might work. We do a lot of Tuesday, Wednesdays. I'm also open to doing a weekend if that works better for people. But I would love to continue this conversation somehow.
Yeah, I don't mean to be like derailing other conversation going on. I just wanted to check in about that before I leave. I can't be there next week, but I'll stay tuned for other.
Okay. And also, I forgot to say, like, whatever is decided, it will be posted, and it's an open invitation to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for facilitating this call, Isaiah. I think those are some thought-provoking questions, so appreciate it.
Sure thing. Yeah, thank you all for being here. See you again.
Yeah, thanks, Isaiah.
Thank you.
Peace.
I think I'm gonna head out as well. I have to get up early to administer the ACT tomorrow.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Well, good night, everyone.
Before you head out, just to answer Isaiah's question, because my internet booted me off for a second. I'm planning to host a solar working group call this weekend. I think it'll probably be Sunday. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know and I can make sure you're on the email list for that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it looks like we're about to break up here, which I think is fine. I will be happy to ruminate on the things we've talked about tonight. And yeah, I also likewise hope we can continue this conversation. It seems like there's something here for the next monthly meetup as well, perhaps a conversation dedicated to intersectionality and how we can do that a little bit better as a network would be called for. And I'd be interested in having that.
Maybe specifically, like, not just as a concept, but like what issues are being paralleled right now, and like who are the leadership there, and how can we like reach out to them?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's huge. And yeah, I think the talk around immigration is really exciting partly for that reason. I mean, even just like on my Facebook newsfeed, I'm seeing so many Mennonites get behind like sending relief kits to detainees, and like that does not happen at that level with climate change in any case. So I guess I can say it now has, in at least in part. Yeah, so I think that's a good direction to point ourselves as well. All right, well, thanks everyone for coming to the call, and I will see you all around. Any other closing comments?
Awesome to meet you, Abby. Sounds
Yeah.
like you do awesome work.
So great to meet all you guys again for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Abby. I hope it's not the last time.
Yeah, no, definitely. I am excited to join future conversations. I've been wanting to join a network like this for a while.
Awesome.
Woo!
Cool. Okay, good night, y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.